the same type of activity before the war, and the type of activity was actually raiding the storage facilities or warehouses at the railroad depot, extracting from it equipment that's suitable or usable in the oil industry, and then selling it back to those to whom it should have gone to. You know, they were thieves. And just like that, they formed a brotherhood that he felt was like the mafia feels, blood brotherhood. And I think when you look at his face, you can see it. You know, he's like a rock, and that was his dedication, and he was going to do it. And the hell with the Germans. So. Where were we?
Well, you decided to not join in that final group that was surrounded already by the guards, and you were going to...
Well, I went back and joined them in the attic.
Right.
You know. I went back into hiding, and then I joined them in the attic.
So this is around spring of 44 now?
April. 44.
Okay.
So I spent the remaining 3 months of the war in the attic with Natalie and her family and the other family. There were some anxious moments, like when the Germans were finally retreating, evacuating the area. You know, they were caught between the mountains and the Russians who have bypassed them to the north. So they were wandering aimlessly through the town, south to north, and north to south, and south to north, and finally decided to stay for a few days of rest. So where they were staying in the attic, that was about middle of July, end of July, 1944, as they were retreating. They requisitioned a number of places, and they assigned a guy to the Grigorchik family to stay there, a German officer. And so there was the German might and the Jews separated by about not more than 50 feet for several days, 2 or 3 days. And all in all, that was a signal for Vladek and Olga to leave. They didn't want to deal with the Germans and the Jews at the same time. So they left, and they left us up in the attic, sealed, not knowing what's going to happen next.
Did they tell you that they were leaving? Did you know that?
They said they can't take it anymore. And but we are hoping it's soon, because the Russians are already, you know, just a few miles away. So, and a few days later, it happened. They marched in. What a sight! What a sight!
What was it like when they liberated that area?
Well, as soon as we heard they are in town, we broke out of the hiding of the attic and out in the street, seeing the sunshine for the first time in months, with torn clothes and dirty faces and bare feet, swollen feet. But we are out there because we needed to see. We needed to have the eyes filled with Russian soldiers and their tanks and their boys and girls with their new uniforms, and American trucks and all that. It was marvelous. It was marvelous. We were free. We were free.
Where did you go once you found that you were free?
Well, first things first. First thing, I had to go back to meet with Natalie's parents and ask them Natalie's hand in marriage, which they granted. Then we had to go to the Vital Statistics Bureau, and as soon as it opened, and sign in as a married couple and pay our two rubles dues. So we had to do that. We stayed in an abandoned house for a couple of nights, abandoned by, I guess, a German family that was there before. On the first day of freedom, we encountered maybe 100 or so survivors streaming in from the woods, from the mountains, from Gentile homes, all converging on the center of town, and then we see each other, some friends. So we occupied that one house. I don't remember how many of us there were. Stayed overnight. Next day we looked around some more, got our certificate of registration. And by then, Natalie's parents and her brother got their belongings together, and they went down to the next town, Drohobych, which was one where they felt more comfortable in. And we decided to join them there, so we did that. We stayed in Drohobych for about 3 months until the universities opened. And then went to Lvov, where I started school. You see, one of the documents that I kept, one document that I kept, is my high school diploma, because that diploma entitled me to admission on a priority basis, without any examination, to any university of my choice within the Soviet Union. And as soon as I showed up in Lvov, a couple days after they reopened the university, I was accepted. I was given a deferment from the army. I said, okay, your job now is to get the best education you can, because we will need you to rebuild the Soviet Union. Okay? So I started my career as a student. Then later on we moved when the faculty, the Polish faculty moved to the Polish side, to Gliwice. We moved there with him and continued as my studies required.
When did you find out about your mother and aunt and uncle and the others?
You mean what happened to them?
Yes.
Well, I didn't know about my mother other than not being able to communicate with her for quite some time after the war. Didn't know what happened to her. Somebody from Paris came to Stuttgart, and we found out that that person knew my family there in Paris. So we asked if they could set in contact with him. She did, and that's when I found out from my cousin what happened to my mother. Sometime later, I got an official French document which talks about the deportation.
Where did she end up, as far as you know?
Auschwitz. In 42.
How did you get to Stuttgart?
It was my second year of engineering at the Gliwice Institute, which was the successor to the Lvov Institute. I had no thoughts about Stuttgart or emigration like that. I was keeping my mind on the studies. And one day in spring of 1946, we heard and saw it in the paper that there was a pogrom in Kielce, a city in central Poland, where there survived a couple of hundred Jews from the area, and were returning back to their life in Kielce. There was a pogrom instituted by the Polish patriots